Over the past few weeks, Turning Point UK have led a series of protests with Lawrence Fox and Calvin Robinson to protest against Drag Queen Story Hour. In response to this, Politics Joe, which is a left-wing media organisation, have decided to gaslight the British public into thinking that, for one, it's not happening, but two, at the same time, simultaneously, that if it's happening, it's a good thing. It's completely ridiculous. Darren, what do you think about this?
Well, yes, I mean, we often do get gaslit, don't we, as conservatives, small c or big C, about this idea that there isn't actually a culture war in Britain. I mean, Jess, I've just come across today a clip from Netflix in which there was a non-binary cow.
Name Fred. That's because I'm non-binary, and Fred is the name that fits me best. And I also use they and them because calling me a she or a he doesn't feel right to me.
I'm sorry I used the wrong name and pronouns.
You know, of the sort of this Sam Smith creature that dwells within the top charts in the United Kingdom and in America. And I worry actually about the politicization of young minds, the ideas of introducing topics like white fragility, white privilege, which we discussed on this channel with Disney only the other week. And now we see non-binary cows and they, thems being introduced to young children via Netflix. And this drag queen story time thing. And it all suggests to me, I'll tell you what it suggests to me. I go back to the grooming gang scandal, right, where we were often told, or we were too afraid, politicians were, and commentators, too afraid to actually speak out about this sort of thing because they were afraid of being called some ism or phobia, right? And that meant that they were too afraid to actually stand up and protect young girls. And I wonder if the same thing is actually going to happen ultimately here, where we find that a generation of young people are going to be exposed to ideas around chopping off their breasts in the name of gender identity, being popped on generally irreversible hormone treatments, like there's some kind of, pill farmed creatures. We're going to see a generation of children grow up believing that their skin colour, it gives them inherent privileges and that they ought to be profusely apologetic for, despite the fact they might not, they might have been born on a council estate, Jess, but they're brought up to believe that they should apologise for the accident of their birth. And so many other things like this, where I start to really worry about what we're doing to a new generation of young minds. How will the young mind of this day and age grow up to actually go out into the world and be a robust, autonomous actor without being absolutely terrified about climate change, for one, because of Greta and her cult, that teenage truant, be absolutely terrified that actually, they need to, I don't know, be held back in the workplace because actually maybe someone will accuse them of being privileged because of their skin colour or something ridiculous, or in the same token, being held back at work because actually that their skin colour is black and therefore they can't get a promotion, when, that's nonsense. I think we're a country in which if you're talented enough, you can go far, and long may that continue. We've got fantastic race relations in Britain. Long may that continue, despite all that these race baiters, frankly, try to do in our country. And then thirdly, a whole confused generation that deeply regrets transitioning and doing things to their bodies, binding their breasts and all sorts, and actually saying, I regret what I did to my body because popular culture told me that I was potentially in the wrong body because I was going through puberty. All of these things suggest to me that there is still a fear of isms and phobias that prevent commentators and politicians actually being able to speak up and speak out on behalf of our generations, the next generation of British people. And I worry about that, Jess.
Absolutely, you can see it through the framing that the right wing has started a culture war. No, the left started the culture war through the critical race theory of BLM, the divisive theory of like gender theory, teaching kids that you should judge people based on their race, not the content of their character. Or as you were saying, through the trans stuff, through the drag queen story hour stuff, that is a culture war, and we're simply reacting to that. The thing is about conservatives, we react, we don't put forward things, and that can be through our detriment sometimes. But with this, we're simply reacting to what the left is putting forward.
Yeah, I mean, Roger Scruton, late and great that he is, he once said that actually conservatives are there to defend things because they love them, right? We're there to defend things because actually we acknowledge that education, for as long as, we've had universal education in which every child of every background receives the right to an education in this country, we've never adopted ideas around gender identity or white privilege or white fragility or around all of these, I don't know, bringing drag queens in and things like that to read stories to children. We actually just recognize that mathematics, science, and English were all pretty fundamental parts of any child being able to go out and into the world and function, frankly, and be the upskill in the workforce to actually be fit for the future. So it's all of these things where I just worry that we've totally lost our way of where education should be, and actually the more sort of left-wing academia that seeps into, and it primarily comes from America, it's got to be said, but it seeps through into the culture here, and we're seeing more and more of it being promulgated at our children. And I do worry about it. I don't think it's a conspiracy theory. I don't think it's totally nuts to say that. I think we're seeing more and more examples of this sort of thing being introduced to children at a very young age. And I imagine that so many parents these days are wishing they could pull their child out and homeschool them, but obviously they simply cannot afford to. So the Conservative Party, 13 years it's been in power, where are they at in this conversation?